What's up, guys? How's it going? Mr. Arnold coming right back at ya for another episode of History Comes Alive. And in this episode of History Comes Alive, we are going to be looking at part 1 to World War II. Alright, this is part 1 of World War II. And in this part 1 video, we are going to be separating this video into 3 different segments. The first segment, we're going to be looking at the geography that tied and played a role into World War II. The second segment, we're going to be looking at the policy of appeasement and see how it failed during the time of World War II. And then in the last segment, we are going to be looking at how the Axis powers jumped out to a quick lead and were gaining an upper hand early and often in the beginning of World War II. But there's a lot of great stuff in here. I want you guys to keep that in mind. So make sure you're paying close attention, taking copious notes. There's a lot of great stuff yet to come. What's up, guys? Mr. Arnold sliding back in here, and in this first segment we are going to be looking at the role geography played during the time of World War II. Okay, ladies and gents, and I want you to keep in mind two different vocab terms. The first being this: Allied powers. The Allied powers, ladies and gents, were made up of countries such as Britain, France, and later on in the world wars, we are going to see the United States joining them, just like they did during World War I. So, keep in mind, Britain and France are going to make up the Allied powers. Later on, we're going to have the United States join, and we're going to have another powerful country flip-flop positions. We're going to see the Soviet Union join the Allied powers as well later on, after Adolf Hitler decides he's going to invade Soviet Union, even after him and Stalin have an agreement and a pact. So keep those four countries in mind: Britain, France, and the Soviet Union. On the flip side, we're going to look at the Axis powers, ladies and gents. The Axis powers were made up of fascist regimes such as Germany, Italy, and we're going to see them join in with Japan. Two other countries that you can list down that are somewhat important, but not really in terms of the heavy hitters, the bigger countries dealing with World War II, the conflict of World War II, would be Romania as well as Bulgaria. They are two smaller countries in Eastern Europe that are going to later join the Axis powers, not play as pivotal of a role, but they still play a role. So can't forget the small guys, the little guys, right? So when we look at this map here, ladies and gents, the world will become divided, okay? They will become divided. Throughout the early part of World War II, we are going to see Nazi Germany and fascist Italian regime really control continental Europe. We're going to see the Germans expand and invade into places like Poland and Lithuania, and later into Scandinavia, such as Denmark and Norway. We're going to see them move west and take over all of France, as well as tighten really the noose or the grip on all of Europe, really putting the pressure on Britain, one of our allied countries, okay? One of the allied countries. So most of Europe at the beginning of World War II will become kind of fallen to the Axis powers. On the flip side of that, what we see in Africa is we see some of the Axis powers really gaining hold in Africa. Specifically in certain places such as Ethiopia, ladies and gents. Ethiopia is going to be one of the places where we're going to see the Italian fascist empire gain control, as well as we'll see Libya being part of the Axis powers empire, really, that's building at this moment in time. As we go to Asia, as I pointed out earlier, we are going to see the Soviet Union and Germany buddy up at first. However, over time, we're going to see Adolf Hitler stab Joseph Stalin in the back, all right, when he invades Soviet Union, and the Soviets are going to flip-flop to that of the Allied powers. So we're going to see that occur. On the Far East, we're going to start to see the empire, the rising sun, rise up and imperialize other countries. We're talking about Japan here, ladies and gents. Japan is going to take over places such as the Korean Peninsula and extend its control into northeastern China. They'll have some land that they conquer and later imperialize. In addition to that, ladies and gents, they're going to conquer and imperialize southeastern island countries, such as the archipelago of the Philippines, all right? as well as other places such as Indochina, as well as what is now Vietnam. The key thing I want you guys to remember, World War II was a war in which we see the Allied versus the Axis powers fight. The Allied versus the Axis power fight. And early on, we are going to start to see the Axis powers gain an upper hand. Alright, that's all I got for this first segment, dealing with geography. We're going to move on to our second segment, dealing with the policy of appeasement. What's up, guys? How's it going? Mr. Brown sliding back in here for the second segment, and in the second segment, let's analyze that policy of appeasement. Now, when we look at this segment, there's going to be three vocab terms that we're going to look at right away, and it's the first one that I want to talk about, appeasement. Appeasement is a policy that one country will have or follow in order to avoid a conflict, a war. The British and the French followed this policy of appeasement during Hitler's rise to power, during the Nazis' rise to power in Europe. And remember, we're going to start to see them try and avoid conflict at all costs, so much so that they have to make a concession to an aggressor, which is essentially make an agreement with the aggressive country. In this instance, it's going to be Adolf Hitler and the Nazis. And as a result, ladies and gents, we're going to start to see the Nazis gain even more power because there's no one really tightening them or limiting their power in Europe, or really checking their power. Remember, the League of Nations at this point in time is really non-existent. It has no real power, and it can really not enforce the Treaty of Versailles. Now, another vocab term that I want to look at is pacts. Pacts are essentially an agreement that two countries or people make in which needs to be followed, okay? In which there should be order, in which there should be rules to follow. In this instance, at the Munich conference, where Neville Chamberlain and people like Edouard Daladier, the French Prime Minister, where they all met in Munich with Adolf Hitler, there were pacts created, and there were also agreements made. An agreement in which Adolf Hitler could keep all the land that he has just conquered and taken over for the Nazi Empire. I'm talking about specifically the Rhineland, I'm talking about the Sudetenland, I'm talking about Austria. They are all going to be a part of Adolf Hitler's empire right now, ladies and gents, because he has agreed to conquer and invade no other place. As long as he does that, ladies and gents, Neville Chamberlain and Edouard Daladier were okay with giving him that land. However, we know that Hitler does not do that. Now, there's a couple of reasons why people appeased back then. The biggest one is this. Avoiding another global conflict at all costs. Remember, World War I was extremely horrific, in which there was a large amount of casualties. Another reason is this, that the Germans were seen as less of an aggressor than Stalin and the Soviets. Okay, the British were okay with Nazi Germany as long as it kept them in between the Soviets. Okay, it was seen as more of a buffer zone. All right, more and more British people were scared of the Soviets than they were of Hitler and Nazi Germany. Also remember that Neville Chamberlain, ladies and gents, he was supposed to enforce the Treaty of Versailles. Well, we know back then that Hitler was not following the Treaty of Versailles whatsoever. He was building up a very, very strong militia that was using the blitzkrieg tactics and was able to conquer land with minimal resistance. And Neville Chamberlain in Britain and France, all they could do is just simply watch. Why? Because they did not have an army or a military that could really discipline the Germans for violating the Treaty of Versailles. Now, the whole time you might be thinking, well, where is the United States? We know they eventually play a role. At this point in time, guys, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the President of the United States, wants to keep his hands clean, okay? He is following a policy of isolationism, in which we see the United States not taking a side with either the Nazis or the British or the French. They're kind of one step below neutrality, in which they do not even get involved whatsoever with what's going on in Europe. Now, Hitler's response to the Munich Pact is going to be something that I want you guys to keep in your heads for a very long time. We know that with the pact, he was promised to maintain and conquer those lands. He was given those lands. He was able to have them. However, For 6 months, he follows the pack, but he goes against it when he finally invades Poland in 1939. And this is where we're going to start to see the beginning to World War II beginning. Okay, so this is a start to World War II when we see Adolf Hitler defy the pact, defy the Treaty of Versailles, and later invade Poland. That's all I have for this second segment, dealing with the policy of appeasement. We're going to move into our last segment, talking about the Axis powers gaining an upper hand in the first part of World War II. I'll see you guys there. Alright guys, Mr. L sliding back in here for this third and final segment, and we are going to be talking about how the Axis powers gained an upper hand here. In the first part of this segment, let's talk about how fascist empires are being built in Europe. Specifically, let's look at Italy as well as Germany. In Italy, ladies and gents, we're going to start to see an empire being built. Italians will build an empire in Africa in which they will start to tap oil reserves, hoping that this will fuel their war machine as well as build the Nazis in Germany up. In Nazi Germany, we're going to start to see the rise of Adolf Hitler use certain outlets such as Mein Kampf, aka My Struggles, and he's going to use that to gain power. This is important. Now, what's he going to do with that power is that he's going to buddy up with Mr. Benito Mussolini. And as a result of that, I know it's a lot of as a result, but the key theme is this. We are going to start to see fascism engulf that of Europe, specifically in Italy and Germany to start off with. Next, when we talk about the invasion of Poland in 1939, I want you to keep in mind the vocab term of blitzkrieg, lightning warfare. Adolf Hitler invaded Poland in 1939 using the blitzkrieg tactic, in which he's going to take tanks and soldiers as well as planes, and they're going to target one area and penetrate and enter in through their enemy lines in one area and later surround them and engulf them in a way in which there's nowhere to really turn or run. It's very similar to how an infection infects the body. It enters through one area and later spreads. The Nazis are going to use this, and they're going to become the most dominant military in the world. Next, let's look at how appeasement failed in Europe and the results of that. Appeasement is going to fail in Europe, ladies and gents, because the British and the French had no real teeth. Adolf Hitler is going to come away from the Munich conference seeing the French, seeing the British as weak worms, as weak countries. Whatever they say really has no meaning or merit to it. There's really no teeth in the discipline that they're going to hand out. Why? Because they don't stand up to Adolf Hitler and the Third Reich, the empire that he's building in Germany. When we see the invasion of Poland, we're also going to see Stalin and Hitler create a non-aggressive pact in which they're going to buddy up. And we're going to start to see Stalin and Hitler split Poland in two. We're going to start to see in the east, Poland fall to the Soviets. In the west, it'll fall to the Nazis. And the key theme to keep in mind here is this, that Neville Chamberlain's appeasement has failed, and this will also result in the rise of Winston Churchill coming to power as Prime Minister in England. Now, Winston Churchill coming to power is extremely important in terms of the history of World War II. Why, you might ask, is because he's the first person in Europe that's ready to say, bring it on to Hitler. He's ready to battle royale with Hitler, to go a couple rounds with Hitler and the Nazis. He's not afraid of what they got, and he's going to mobilize Britain into becoming a war-ready nation. He's going to motivate them. Now, when we wrap up part one of World War II, I want you to keep in mind this, that the Axis powers, Italy, Germany, and the Japanese in Asia, we're starting to see them expand in Asia. They're going to be winning big here. There is going to be a big lead that the Axis powers are going to get out to here in the first half, okay? So going into halftime, things are not looking good for the Allied countries. All right, that's all I got for this video dealing with World War II. Remember, this is part one of the World War II videos. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please feel free to leave a comment or a suggestion, Marvel Ovetska, I hope that suggestion worked out for you involving the vocab terms. That's all I got for this episode. I'll see you guys later. Take care.